Welcome, dear listener, to something quite new. It's called Podtime Stories, and it's made just for you. Chronicles dark and grotty, the littler ear may find it too nasty, but you've nothing to fear. These tales, they seep out of a most twisted mind. It belongs to Luke Aldridge, and I know that you'll find that they tickle the brain and the soul in equal measure. Look deep down here for your listening pleasure. So come with me, friends, and we'll share this account. Some may make you think just a smallish amount, but if you are worried that this tale could be true, I'm sure that it's nonsense. Quite sure. Now, are you? Welcome to Podtime Stories.
The subject for this story is a little more sinister than last week's, so you might want to give it a listen before you play it to any wee ears. Burgers, read by me, Luke Aldridge, and featuring the voice of Irene Herity, Foley by Handsome Bob Field and myself, and the accompanying art was created by George Lopes. I met her online and we had a few dates. Not really my thing, but I had a few mates that had tried it and liked it and met lovely folks. Some of them ladies, some of them blokes. We had lots in common, sci-fi and movies, trying to eat better, wake up and make smoothies, the odd book or album that helped break the ice. She thought I was fit, which was nice. Coffee, a park stroll, a trip to the flicks, dinner, the theatre, and then for date 6, she said,
"I'd like to cook for you round at my place."
I couldn't say no to that sweet smiling face.
"Come round for 7. I'll do grub for 8. Any requests for our first home-cooked plate?"
What do you cook there's not too much to do?
"I'll do push burgers, if that's all right with you."
Burgers are up there in my all-time greats. Burger and pint when I'm out with my mates, but I never would ask for one when on a date, a dish that I'd save for a pub-frequenting mate. There's nothing about them that I feel ashamed. The mess down my front, though, can often be blamed on a burger that I thought I could easily manage, but turns out to do me and my shirt some damage. I dressed for the worst, black shirt, plain no stripes, and into my trousers a pack of wet wipes just in case I ended up wearing the grub. My glorious date was soon to serve up. There at her door with a bottle and blooms, she welcomed me in and I toured all the rooms, then followed to the kitchen, opened the wine. I poured her a glass and then I poured mine. That bottle down, we opened the next. Both of us laughing, we didn't seem vexed that the meal she'd planned for us wasn't yet cooking. Too busy chatting, it hadn't a looking. Later than planned, we sat down to eat. Juicy red burgers, oh what a treat, and those double-cooked chips and that thick homemade relish, and none of that salad you'd use to embellish. "This looks amazing," I said to my host. Coyly she smiled and offered a toast.
"To the yummiest man that I've met for yonks."
Glasses were raised, gave them some clonks.
"Tuck in,"
she said, and I could hardly wait to sample the artistry there on my plate, so I picked up my knife and I picked up my fork, but no sooner had I felt such a dork. When I looked at her, she had scooped up her bun, grasping it eagerly betwixt finger and thumb, and she bit into it without care for who knew how much she obviously wanted to chew. So I joined her by ditching my cutlery. Then I munched on that burger and bun, and that's when, with eyes closed, I savoured that most scrumulous bite before I felt something that made my chest tight. Her hand touching mine as I relished that flavour. Then our eyes met. I continued to savour the meatiest meat that I ever had eated, all of the previous burgers defeated. Finished our meal, and I helped clear away. Tummies were full. I could honestly say that was the bestest burger that I had ever eaten. All of the others had been sorely beaten. I paid her such compliments as anyone should.
"I know that you're stuffed, but fancy some pud?"
I'd love some, but first I must nip for a wee. It must be the wine. We were on bottle 3. On my way round to the loo I did spy a door that before did not catch my eye. It must have been hiding behind that curtain. I didn't notice it. Must have been flirting. Oddly, it didn't match all of the rest. Heavier, scuffed, a bit of a mess. It made me curious. I must explore this odd one outdoor. I had to know more. There was a key in the keyhole I spied, and keys in keyholes are surely justified to be used, to be turned, or they wouldn't be there. In a door with a keyhole, that wouldn't be fair. How long did I have until she noticed me and my absence was longer than the average wee? Surely she wouldn't come checking whilst I whittled. But the key was quite tricky, so I fidged and I fiddled. Finally it clicked open. I twisted the handle and opened the door, the room lit by candle, so all I could make out was shoes in their scores. Gentlemen's shoes filled the walls and the floors. Into the room I stepped to explore. Contents this odd I had to know more. So I picked up the candle from off of the shelf. And that's when a new thing revealed itself. Shiny and metal, it stood 5 feet tall. I'd never seen anything like it at all. At first I couldn't decide what I saw, so closer I went, and then I saw more. See, the shadows swept clear by the light of the candle, some sort of bowl with some kind of handle. Dozens of holes with stuff still stuck inside, open on top, circular, wide. Then without warning, a pain in my neck. I didn't have time to look round and check as the room went all wobbly and fuzzy before my knees did the same and my head hit the floor. Waking up dangling head first and nude. That was the point that I knew I was screwed, as a sound that was ringing in both of my ears, mechanical, parts moving, cogs whirring, gears. Then from the fog in my brain I could hear a voice so familiar, came loud and clear. She said,
Why couldn't you just have gone to the loo? All of the ones that have come before you were just people I met to get into the grinder. And when we first met, I knew that I'd find a new partner, a match that was just meant to be. Now you'll end up another Patty.
A kiss on the cheek, a smile, and then the push of a button, whirring, and that was when it became clear that I would soon become her next juicy burger in flowery bun. Try online dating, my friend said to me. Meet some nice folks, you can try it for free. How could I know that it would end up in murder, ending with me as a juicy man burger? Burgers was written and read by me, Luke Aldridge, featuring the voice of Irene Herity. Foley by Hanson Bob Field and myself, with accompanying art by George Lopes. Editing, sound production and general oral wizardry by Hanson Bob Field. The introduction was read by Neil Roberts, saxophone and clarinet was played by Toby James, guitar by Simon Coleman, keys by 80s Dave Oliver, bass by Andrew McKinney. The theme was written by me, I also played drums and stuff. The Podtime Stories logo was created by Irene Herity and the pod was written and produced by me. Podtime Stories is a Papa Bear Chronicles production. Text and recording copyright Luke Aldridge 2024. The right of Luke Aldridge to be identified as the author of this work has been asserted by him in accordance with the Copyright Designs and Patents Act 1988. All rights reserved. Hello, lovely listener. Welcome and thank you for tuning in for this second story, Burgers. It's lovely to have you here for the DVD extras. where I natter a little bit about the people involved and maybe offer a few thoughts about the story, where it came from. We're 2 stories in now. I'm sure you'll agree slightly different tones in the two stories you've heard so far, and we'll talk about that in a bit. So the people involved, it came down to me really to read this one. When I first started thinking about putting this podcast together, I wasn't really sure who I would get to read it. I figured that sort of a chunk of 10 stories is probably a good amount of stuff to put out. Gave me a bit of a kick up the bum to finish some stuff and write a couple of new things. But I wasn't sure how I would get the stories out to people, who would read them, that sort of thing. And I was asked by an old friend of mine, Fiona Troon, who's putting together one of the soundtracks for what's probably going to be the last story that you'll hear. Read by Neil Roberts with music by Fee. I was asked by her to read a poem that she'd written, which was part of a composition that she was doing. The 3 people involved, a parkourist, herself playing bassoon with electronics, and then a sound technician. They'd all read parts of the story, and she'd asked me to be the 4th voice. The feedback that she got was really complimentary. Lots of people sort of saying, who's that other voice? And that really sort of gave me the confidence to read some of this stuff myself. I don't claim in any way, shape or form to be a voice actor, but I feel comfortable reading my own stories. So there we go. I definitely wanted to have a female voice in this rather than me doing a silly voice. And Irene is an old friend. We did our A-levels together and we've been friends ever since. Lost touch a bit between sort of A-levels and then I moved to Ealing to go to music college, and we happened to bump into each other at a bus stop in our early 20s, I think it was. She'd been doing some stuff at the Questors Theatre there. I was heading back to where I was living in Ealing, and yeah, we've been in touch ever since. So it was lovely to be able to ask Irene to be involved. A bit of information about Ren. She started training at the age of 5 and has various qualifications in acting and singing. She has won many accolades and awards for her career, performing on stages in and around London. Currently, she's a vocal coach and singing teacher and can be found gigging in and around Oxfordshire. She's also a mum. And I also know her fantastic, lovely husband, Martin Herity, through a message I put out. I talked about my master's project last week with Carl Hewitt being the illustrator for that project. I wanted to put it together as essentially a case file. It was a script for a TV series about a couple of time enforcement agents, and I wanted to put it together as kind of a grubby case file, paper case file sort of looking thing, put out a general sort of, does anyone know a good graphic designer? Put that out on Facebook, and Irene came back and said, yeah, you should talk to Martin. And he did a brilliant job. He's done loads of design stuff for me since. He's put together the comic books that you can find at BBC Comics. He designed the logo for Podtime Stories. He's done various other bits and pieces. He's a very patient and lovely dude. He, what I tend to do is I'll have an idea in my head. I will draw it incredibly badly, take a photo, send him the photo of this kind of scribbling on the back of an envelope, and then he basically takes that and turns it into something that looks brilliant. So thank you, Martin, for not only for doing the logo, but putting up with my general idiotic requests. You're a good man. The accompanying art was created by George Lopes. Now, George is a guy that I've had a few dealings with. He's a tattoo artist as well as an illustrator. And when I came to looking to have some work done, having had both my arms tattooed, I've got a pair of tattoo sleeves, if you don't know me. I was looking to have a big piece done on my back at a time that was kind of, COVID was still kicking around. Lockdowns had been lifted, but it was definitely very much kind of, it was definitely something that was still, people were very aware of. I wanted to go to a closed studio, basically, and both Gemma and Lucy, my 2 sisters, have had work done by George. Lucy's a mate of George's. I consider George a friend now as well, as I'm sure Gemma and her husband Paul. They've both had work done by George. I'm sure that they think of George like that too. So George has done a couple of things for me tattoo wise, but also when it came to my book Blunt and Mag's Back to School, the idea was that these two they work for the same time travel enforcement agency that Berger and Ralph do, but they are the kind of dark special ops end of things. They were basically given a mission that was to close down an assassin school that had started up. The idea being that every time that they jumped sort of dimension, it's sort of a heist, a chase story. Every time that the dimension jump happens, it would be handed over to a different artist. So I got in touch with a whole bunch of artists that had either done stuff with me before or people that I knew I was a fan of their stuff. And George hadn't done a comic book before, so it was great to have George involved. He did 3 pages for me. And when it came to thinking about artwork for the podcast, which I have to say, all of the artwork stuff was a bit, not last minute, it's not the right word, but it certainly wasn't something that I was thinking about when I started putting the podcast together. It was definitely something that came later. So I asked George if he'd be up for doing something, and what I've done with the artists and the musicians is I've basically just sent them a link to a Dropbox folder of either the written stories or, if they've been recorded already, recordings of the stories, and basically just said, have a look through that stuff, pick what you like. If there's something that appeals to you, brilliant, get on that. So a bit of information about George. He's been passionate about drawing since childhood. He used to draw portraits of the other passengers on the Underground as a child. He's an illustrator and 20 years experience as a tattoo artist. You can find him on Instagram at Bingo Pajama Tattoo. Links and stuff to his socials are on our website, thepuppetbearchronicles.com. But George's work as a tattoo artist as well as an illustrator is completely fabulous. Do check it out, give him a follow and have a look at his stuff. I can heartily recommend him as well as a tattoo artist if you're thinking of having any work done or if you're in need of a new person to help you out with some artwork. So the story kind of came up as a combination of things. In the Kingsman film, The Golden Circle, it's the second one of the Kingsman films. There's a great image of Keith Allen being fed into basically a massive mixer, a kind of big meat grinder thing, and he gets pulverized basically, sort of the first scene of the baddie, and that really stuck with me. I think it was kind of a combination of that and my experiences with online dating, as I think most people these days have probably done the online dating thing in one shape or form. The two things kind of met in my brain, I guess, and I really liked the idea of this kind of serial killer type character. Thought it was interesting that she would be a she rather than, the stereotypical serial killers generally being blokes. But I thought it was interesting the twist that she's actually looking for love rather than necessarily trying to get people into a meat grinder. So yeah, it was all of those sort of thoughts all came together, really. So the Foley, if you're not familiar with that term, is basically just sound effects. It's the kind of filmy TV speak for sound effects. If you already know that term, apologies for podsplaining to you. So bless handsome Bob Field. He's not only is he a lovely, wonderful audio studio chap, he's also a completely fabulous and lovely human being. I love him dearly. He puts up with a lot of stupid stuff that I throw at him. Yes, we do have a giggle. The idea with Burgers, it wasn't an obvious one to soundtrack. It wasn't a story that necessarily jumped out at anyone as being something that they wanted to soundtrack. They sort of picked other bits and pieces. And to me, it made more sense for it to have some sound effects instead of a musical soundtrack. So Bob and I have had lots of fun putting together the soundtrack for this. We have laughed and laughed and laughed some more. Bless him. He does put up with, as I say, with a lot of stupid requests. There's one effect in there that I wanted to lift from Young Frankenstein, the brilliant Mel Brooks film starring Gene Wilder. There's a scene where he and his assistant discover a spinning kind of secret doorway bookcase sort of thing, and the candlestick is the thing that is the trigger, the lever for this rotating door. So it's kind of over and over again, this candle is taken out, put back, taken out, put back. So that you hear is actually lifted straight from the Mel Brooks film. On reflection, after we'd put the effect in, we realised that it didn't actually sound that much like a candle, or maybe it wasn't the sound that we needed. I think the line is something about lifting a candle off of a shelf or something like that, whereas this is obviously kind of pulling a candle out of a holder. However, a bit of tweakage, a bit of reverb, and bless him, Bob humoured me and we've still got that sound in there. Things like that, and him recording me throwing cutlery on a table and all sorts of daft stuff. So bless you. Thank you, handsome Bob, for all that you do, all of the hours that you've put in and just generally humouring me. You're a good man and I'm very grateful. Bless you. So that's pod number 2 done. We'll be back this time next week with our third story, The Flarg. As always, if you've liked the pod, if you've enjoyed what you've heard, please subscribe, share, like, all of the usual stuff. Give us a follow on Instagram and Facebook at the Papa Bear Chronicles. You can check out more information, links to the websites and social medias of the readers and artists, musicians at the papabearchronicles.com. You can also see pictures of their beautiful smiling faces. Thanks again for listening. And until next week, take care, be good, stay out of trouble, and sleep tight. Don't let the pod bugs bite.